there are multiple universes. What about the ones where the Nuggets don't win the title? What are the ones where Jamal Murray isn't that guy in the playoffs? What about the ones where someone we didn't expect winds up making a huge impact for the Nuggets? What if the Nuggets don't get the 1 seed? What if the Nuggets do get the 1 seed? We're going to play a little what if today on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen. Appreciate you guys being with us and being part of our community, joining us Monday through Friday. Glad to have you with us. We are available on all platforms. You can catch us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We do appreciate 5-star reviews and subscribe, especially on YouTube. You can catch us at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Appreciate you guys being with us on Thursday. Gosh, where does the time go? On a Thursday. Appreciate you guys being with us today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Swipa Cam. You can follow him on Twitter and on YouTube at Swipa Cam. Got lots of folks hanging out with us in the chat already. 5-ish, who's always first. You need to be first-ish. Hurricane's hanging out with us, who's asking what's taking so long. We chat. Sometimes we just talk and we get distracted and then we have to catch up. Joe's in here with us. Lots of folks hanging out with us here today. 5-ish says, have you both got all the Super Bowl salt out of the way? No, we haven't. I have a delivery coming from NFLshop.com today that I'm very excited about. Got some new stuff for my office coming in. I'm very excited about that, Swipe. But on today's show, we're talking about some what ifs, because we're at this point in the season. The Nuggets exist in, I think, a fascinating limbo point where they're not first in the Western Conference, they're fourth in the Western Conference, but they're also not sixth or seventh in the Western Conference. They're on a 3-game losing streak, which of course has caused people to panic, as I talked about the other day, and how people need to settle down. There's every reason to believe the Nuggets are going to win the championship again. I still believe they have the most championship equity in the league. However, a lot of things can happen. And so I like these conversations because it gives us kind of an inflection point of what we think about the future, about what will happen, what could happen, and what our reactions would be if those things were to happen. And we'll get into some big picture stuff and some micro picture stuff and some stuff along the way. So first off, Swipa, how you doing here on a Thursday?
I'm good. I have enjoyed the All-Star break. It's been a nice little break to not be watching basketball every single night, catching up on some shows, finally finished Loki for all of my Marvel heads out there. Also finishing some stuff from Star Wars as well. So look, I'm tapped in, man. I have a lot of different things that I'm lined into. So it's been great. It's been a good little break.
I watched Marvels with my daughter, who is starting to get into Captain Marvel. I watched Marvels the other day, and that everyone's like, oh, it was such a flop. But I'm like, yeah, people didn't watch it, but they should have, because it was really good. I really liked Marvels, had a really good time watching it. And you know who's also a Marvel? Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic is a Marvel. And so we'll talk about him today with this. Let's talk about this, though. I am less interested in the how. I think we know the how of if the Nuggets don't win the title. It's a starter gets injured and they're not able to kind of hold up from there. But I will ask you this question, and then I want to get to what the perspective of the season would be if they don't. If the Nuggets don't win the title, what's something you think that happened that caused their fall in a playoff series?
Oh man, that's an interesting question. It would probably have to do something with the fact that they were in a situation where the bench was so porous that while they were in the game, basically when Jokic left, they were like a minus 18 consistently 4 times out of 7 times in the series. I think that's probably the biggest thing. I think that Peyton Watson and Christian Brown and Reggie Jackson just were not enough. Like a lot of people were speculating during the regular season. A lot of people were hoping that they would make an upgrade. You know, I was watching some of the highlights from the playoffs just a few days ago, Matt, because I'm a junkie. And, you know, I was watching Bruce Brown finish a lot of those cuts that Joker would feed him to the rim, or he was applying a lot of pressure at the rim, or he was converting at a high level around the rim. And Reggie Jackson is just not the same player. So maybe he misses 1 or 2 layups, 1 or 2 little spot floaters in a game instead of what Bruce Brown did last year. Maybe that's the difference. Now it's 94 to 92 and it goes somebody else's way. So I think the big thing would probably be, I don't know if the starters would be the reason, given that of all the teams that have logged a lot of minutes, they have the best starting 5 in the NBA outside of the Clippers, but they have way more minutes played than the Clippers. So I would think it would come down that their bench unit just wasn't able to get it done. They weren't good enough, consistently enough. And I don't think that Jokic was able to lift up a non-Murray-led unit anymore. That's just because everybody's kind of all over the place. So that would be my speculation if they were to lose in the playoffs, especially in the Western Conference.
That's interesting. The bench is going to play so few minutes that I have a hard time getting to a spot where I believe that they could be really blamed for it. They would be, because folks don't ever want to blame the starters. But I do think it's hard to kind of blame them in those kind of situations. For me, honestly, I'll come back to this. So I was talking to Seth Partnow, who does a lot of smart stuff over at The Athletic. He worked in analytics for the Milwaukee Bucks, and now he works for The Athletic, and he also has a consulting job and works for a company on the outside doing sports analytics. And one of the things that he was looking at how it's kind of what's changed really has been in the mid 2000s or 2010s, really. You could get a real advantage by just playing Morey ball. That's why teams started doing it, was if you just focused in on where you shot from, if you just shot more threes, specifically corner threes, if you just generated more of those shots and shots at the rim versus the mid-range shot that everyone kind of complains about, that conversation, you had a higher percentage chance of winning. But that's basically flattened out. And one of the reasons is that guys are so much better above the break now shooting threes, and they're better at contested shots. And the guys that are shooting from mid-range are really high volume efficiency shooters. Most of the teams are just smarter at the kind of shots that they pursue. In particular, you just don't have a lot of guys that are star players that are taking a lot of inefficient shots. Like, you don't have guys, if you're taking shots from mid-range, I've always said this, it's totally fine if you're taking shots from mid-range, if you're averaging 45% or better from that range. That's totally fine. As long as you're in that range, it's not great efficiency, but it's enough for, like, on average for you to be able to get through there. Like a 0.9 is really good. My point here, though, is that if the Nuggets lose, I do think it's going to come back to they get outshot from three-point range. They've been really good this season at being able to mitigate that and win these games even when they're not. But I do think that look, it's not that there's a script to beat them, and because that's the same way with any sort of great player of Jokic's caliber. If you double teamed LeBron, he would tear you up with passing. If you tried to play him one-on-one, which no one really, I don't think, did enough. They really didn't. But he would score 50 on you. And Jokic is really kind of built the same way. But I do think that the script is going to be make Jokic play one-on-one and make him score 40 because he doesn't want to do that, and stay home and then get an advantage by shooting more threes at a higher volume. And the Nuggets defense has been better this season. This is a better defense than last year's. But I do kind of wonder if that 3-point edge could come back and bite them, because when I see teams pull off upsets, the Miami Heat last year versus the Milwaukee Bucks, they shot 45% from three. Versus the Boston Celtics, they shot 43% from three.
Yeah, but their defenses were trash in the regular season versus the three, let alone the playoffs. Like, they had no discipline at all in their rotations. I think the difference is with the Nuggets. You obviously remember they played the Bucks. I think they made 5 threes. The Bucks made 4. No, they made 4. I think the Bucks made 16. I think they had 36 more points if that was the actual number. The Boston Celtics was the same thing, and I think the Nuggets, man, the difference with the Nuggets is you might fire off a lot of threes at certain points in the regular season, or even one game like game 2 versus the Miami Heat when they shot 49% from three on crazy volume, and maybe even game 3 and 4 versus the Phoenix Suns. But again, they eventually changed their defensive coverage up a little bit enough to where now they weren't going to give you those corner threes, because once you prove you can make them for 2 games, then okay, let's go in. We're going to change what we do. But even in those matchups, though, I think the thing is, Matt, those were single digit down to the wire wins by all those teams, even if they did go haywire from the 3-point line. I think the Phoenix Suns won by 4. I think they won by 7 in another game, and then they won by 3 versus when the Heat played them, and they won game 2. And then obviously you had that game versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. But if Jokic makes his free throw, we don't go to overtime, and that's a sweep, a whole different conversation. But even this year versus Boston, this year versus the Bucks, I think the formula for the Nuggets is you might get some 3-point attempts up and a lot of them up. But I think for them is they're going to try to get into their action and get easy shots at the rim and at that mid-range level that they've been really dominant at. Really prior to January 25th when they, went 5-5 for the next 10 games, had a negative net rating and a 27th net rating in the NBA. They were the number one mid-range shooting team in the league, and they're top 3 in attempts at the rim. Now they weren't converting as high because they're taking a little bit more of those floater 4-6 foot area shots, but I think the Nuggets solvent for that is we're going to get really high efficient, good looking shots that are near the basket, that even if you make a few threes here and there, we're just going to continue to pound you in the same spot. And then that way the game is still tight until it's still close. But I will say this, the Nuggets don't have a bad 3-point defense. They're actually really good. And they make it a point to keep you from shooting as many 3-pointers as possible. At least if you look at dunks and threes, it says that they have one of the better 3-point defenses in the NBA. But Boston, they don't. The Bucks, they do not. I mean, there are even other contenders outside of the Nuggets that are high in the list that they struggle mightily when it comes to guarding the 3-point line. Now, for the Denver Nuggets, this whole concept, I think, and Eric Spoelstra talked about this, obviously not you, but when he said, people said to him, do you want to just make Jokic a scorer? He said, well, maybe to the untrained eye. Because ultimately, the Nuggets aren't going to put Jokic in isolation for the majority of the game and say, all right, just go get a bucket. Now, they might for periods, but they're going to put you in 2-man game. They're going to put you in action. They're going to have them come off pin downs, off curls, because they still want to get movement, even if you're single covering. Because even on a single cover, there's ways for Jokic to take advantage of the defense because it's going to have to slant at some point. You're not just going to keep giving me lays at the rim. Or even if we're moving consistently, go ahead.
Okay, you're right. Let's on the other side. I want to continue this discussion because this is a really good conversation, and we're going to keep it up, and we're going to go through some more of the what ifs as well because there's a lot to get to here. This is a fascinating conversation we hit on. Let's do that on the other side when we return on Locked On Nuggets. Right now, I want to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Great game this weekend versus the Warriors. I think I'm going to like the Nuggets in that game. Think Golden State's being a little overvalued based off of recent play versus a really soft schedule. That's a game I expect the Nuggets to get up for. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We're also brought to you today by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It's got a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring's easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. These processes to make your hiring process simpler and more professional are vital. You've got to be able to cut through what is in front of you to get to the most efficient path to the bucket. Like that's the analogy here. Is like you gotta go for the most efficient tactic available, and that's what LinkedIn Jobs gives you. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Let's pick this back up with Swipa. All right, so I got a couple of things that I think are really interesting there. Let me ask you this, because teams won't. I always do think this is interesting, where there's a difference between what teams can do and what they can't do. And I'm about to bring in a football thing here, and I'm not doing it to twist the knife here. I really do think this is applicable.
Hey, 3 championships is a big deal.
Everyone kind of said that. If you the Chiefs' run defense is terrible, just run on them. Just run on them. Why don't they just run them? They're just the Ravens are just going to run on them, even though the Bills didn't. Oh, well, the Niners will do that, even though the Ravens didn't. I kept being like, why do you guys think that this is happening? It's really hard to keep doing it when the defense is stacking the box with 8 and they're run blitzing you constantly to basically tell you, you can do whatever you want. You're not going to be running the edges on us. And this is kind of the same thing where it's really hard to just do the same thing over and over again. If you don't get the even small negative results, it's hard to keep the process. And one of the things I think is interesting here is that you're probably right, because the way to kind of make Jokic a scorer, Swipa, honestly, you play him straight up in the post, no doubles. And when they go to 2-man game, you switch it and you be like, you're going to get your small and you're going to be able to score over him every single time. And that's it. Like, you get to do it. Now, he likes to put you back in and pick and roll in those spots and make the small play as the low man. If you just say, like, we're just going to switch it back. We're just going to keep switching as much as possible, because we're just going to give you what we're going to give you is we're going to give you small guy on Jokic. Now, every Nuggets fan is going to be like, Jokic will have 60. The question here, Swipa, is do you think that Nikola has the mindset to just keep taking that?
Well, he did. He had 53 points and 11 assists, and the second center ever to have 50 points in a playoff setting. So I do think that he will. I think the issue is that I think the thing that I think about the Nuggets that people realize at this point, you're not going to dictate terms for the Nuggets. You might for a little bit, but we're not just going to let you do that the entire game. Because the Miami Heat did that. They were switching everything for a while over the course of some of those games in Miami. And then I think the Suns also tried that a little bit as well. And then obviously you saw versus Kristaps Porzingis and the Boston Celtics. But at the end of the day, we're not just going to sit here on the post and let you do this all game. Because the thing is, now what I will say, teams are more apt to double Joker when there's no Jamal on the court. Because now we know we can get the ball on Christian Brown or Peyton Watson's hand, and we're not really worried about that. So we're going to try to double make somebody else beat us. But Jamal and Joker and Porter and KCP, no, that's crazy. Like, I would never do that. So some of this is Joker will do it because he has done it. I think this is like his 0-4 record in the playoff, and he scored over 40 points is kind of fugazi to me. Like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, the setting in the game 2, they lost by 3, like I said, but also they weren't playing super well. Like, their defense was horrid in that game. But then, again, even the other loss that we have, their defense wasn't good. Now, they've been blown out, like 2018-19 when they played the Spurs. What was it, game like 3 or 4 when they lost? It might have been 4. It was 3? He had 43 points, and they got blown out. But they sucked. They were terrible. Everyone was bad except for Joker. I think the thing is, if the Nuggets are still playing high-level defense, well, cool. Well, fine. Then he's still going to be able to operate, and you're still going to have to spend a lot of energy, even if you're trying to single cover Joker throughout the game. And I just don't think that's a viable formula for 4. Now, again, Matt, to your point, you might be able to win 1 game, maybe 2, but 4 games testing that same theory. I think Malone, Jokic, Murray, they've just shown that they just have an adjustment for everything you're trying to do. And if you try to single cover for the duality of or the duration of the whole entire series, man, I just think that's just bad news for you.
So I got one stat I want to share kind of on the shooting point that I do think is really relevant. And like, this is a stat that I really think that folks need to pay attention to, and they're not. Last season, do you know what the Nuggets ranked in effective field goal percentage league-wide?
Were they 1 last year?
They were 1.
Yeah.
What do you think they are this year?
Oh, I told you, it don't count. That's what I'm telling you. They sank the last 4 weeks of the year, 3 weeks of the year. Prior to that, they were 1. I think legit they're like 9 or 10 right now. They might be 11.
They're 14th.
That's what I'm saying. But look, that it's a 10-game sample size, Matt. It's terrible. They were horrible. They're like a 110 offensive rating.
When do you want to go back to? Give me a date to go back to.
Matt, go prior to January 25th.
25th. All right.
Trolled. So that was right after the Wizards game and the Celtics game.
Okay, we'll go back to that one. And I want to see what this is actually, because maybe you're right here.
But it was like 7 or 6. It
was 6th. It was 6th. So you're right there. But first, and this is a thing that was true last year. And like, it's complicated because it's like, oh, the Nuggets just shot really great. No, like the Nuggets played awesome, and so they created in rhythm shots and open looks and scored great. And so that's why they shot so well. But also they shot really well. And so for me, like this is all about the margin here. Yeah. It's all about like the margin for how much, because last year it really was like, they hit. If you ask how Lakers fans and Suns fans felt, they were just like, they hit every single open 3, every single, like, for the Lakers, they hit every single contested Jamal Murray shot. He didn't miss anything. And it's like, well, that's what Jamal does. Like Jamal
Murray also went like 1-19 for 3 straight games from 3 versus the Suns too.
Right. He was really rough in that series. It's one of the reasons they were never concerned. Like being at those games post game, I expected them to be really down in Phoenix, and like especially after Game 4, I was like, oh. After Game 4, they were like, Aaron Gordon was like, no, we're good.
Yeah,
like they knew it. On the other side, though, I want to talk about Jamal. What if Jamal isn't playoff Jamal this year? I think he's gonna be, but if he's not, what does that look like? What does that mean? How can the Nuggets win anyway if Jamal's not playoff Jamal? We'll talk about that up next on Locked On Nuggets. Right now, I want to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. I had this truck that I absolutely adored. It was a Dodge Dakota in college, and it's my favorite vehicle I've ever driven. A truck that was large enough to transport things for friends and was fun to drive in, but not an absolute behemoth that is impossible to kind of get around sometimes. It was so great. And had I had eBay Motors, I would have been able to keep that car a lot longer, because eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Matt Moore alongside Swipa. So let's talk a little bit about Jamal. Jamal Murray, obviously, averaged 30 points on 50, 40, 90 in the Western Conference Finals, has been dominant in most of the playoff series that he's played in. But Swipa, I will ask you, though, if Jamal isn't able to get there, like let's say that their path is one versus the kind of guards and wings that even Ryan Blackburn admits disrupt Jamal Murray. So they run into a Wolves with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and they run into the Pelicans with Herb Jones and the guys that they're able to bring to the table. And he runs into, I think, who else has got a really good perimeter defender? Nope, there's only really two in the Western Conference. Maybe the Thunder with Lou Dort, right? These big, long wing defenders. Let's say that their path includes those kind of guys and Jamal doesn't get going. If the Nuggets are to advance anyway, if they're able to make the finals, despite Jamal not going into playoff Jamal mode, what does that look like? Who do you think is the biggest guy that steps up? What's the answer there for how they get past it? Is it defense, or is there a number of other guys on the floor that are able to step up and provide that scoring boost, especially on tough shots?
Well, it's probably defense and Michael Porter playing like he was versus the Timberwolves and the Suns through the rest of that Western Conference run in the Western Conference Finals and into the NBA Finals. Because in the first round, I think Porter had an 83% conversion percentage on his drives, and he was also shooting over 40% from three. And his three-point shot, I think, got worse every series. I think he started off like a 43, then like a 41, and then like a 39 or 40, and then it tanked out versus the Heat. But I think that would be Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon solving. Like they would be that much better as secondary or tertiary, and then obviously fourth options that they'll be able to step up. But I think the thing with Jamal, where his game is gone, his playmaking would be much better. I mean, if Jamal's averaging 20 points a game on like a 56 true shooting in a series, well, he's probably averaging 9 or 10 assists at this point. I just think his game isn't as built around scoring as it was a couple years ago. So I think that's the difference, is that the playmaking would be there. KCP, Gordon, and Porter ostensibly would have more opportunity, taking more shots, and they would be having to convert at a decently high level in order to get into the NBA Final. But Matt, let me ask you this question back. What if you're not Matt Moore? What if come playoff time, you're not Matt Moore? What if we get to a situation, Matt, where you got a deadline and you're not the same writer that you've always been? The thing is, it would never happen. You'll never not meet the great Matt Moore. So that's the thing. I expect greatness when I talk to you. I expect greatness from Jamal Murray. So asking me what happens if, I've never seen it. I just haven't seen it, at least for an entire run. We've seen Jamal Murray have some stinkers in some games. But guess what? All NBA guards have stinkers in playoff runs, including Steph Curry. He got quite a few. Devin Booker, quite a few. Donovan Mitchell, the entire last year versus the New York Knicks. So he will have some stinkers. The problem is you're not going to turn Jamal Murray's water off for 4 games in a series. I think is the other equation to that. So they'll have to win with defense when he's not playing super well.
If a Denver starter gets injured, which is obviously the easiest way to kind of like set up a scenario where the Nuggets don't advance because they are so. I mean, Malone cited the stat yesterday for what their record is when they were starting 5 is healthy. If a starter gets injured, KCP's got an ankle. I'm trying to think of like a quad bruise for AG. I think he played through it, but something minor where they can't play, they can't go. Like they got to have a week off. They'll be back, but they'll be out a week, 2 weeks. They're going to miss the rest of the series. If the Nuggets are going to advance, who's the guy that steps up? And more specifically, I know who you're going to say. So after you give me Peyton Watson, who's the guy outside of the top 8 that you think fills in and has a big series? Like who's the surprise guy?
Outside the 8?
Outside the 8.
I mean, on this roster with Malone, it probably would have to be Justin Holiday. I think he's just a more natural fit for what they're trying to do offensively. And then defensively, he's not good, but he's also passable enough at times to where you could get away with playing him next to the starters.
I'm going to surprise you. I genuinely think it might be Zeke. I genuinely think it might be. Because, like, look, one, they're not, I will say this, they won't see it coming. He will not. Julian Strother. Oh, that's a really good answer by Ted.
Yeah.
That's a really good answer by Ted on Julian Strother.
Yeah.
I always think about this. It's one of my favorite things in the NBA is I often think about whenever I'm looking at the playoffs, who's going to be the guy that when I'm on Twitter, I'm seeing the other team's fans being like, this guy's killing us.
Right.
This guy, who was it? Shamet that hit all those threes in Game 4.
Shamet with Lonnie Walker, remember, versus the Warriors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or the Lakers, you mean?
No, it was versus the Warriors in the Warriors
series. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he had like 15 points in the 4th quarter.
Like, but Grace hits me with a Zeke. Look, here's the deal. Okay. If you're pressed into a situation where, like, let's say AG gets hurt, AG is quietly a very big deal here because it takes away the Nuggets' ability to stay big. Like that's the problem is their replacement options. Peyton is still. Would you agree with me that Peyton is still much more of a 3 than he is a 4?
Oh, I'm not coming off this hill. He's a 3 or a 2. I don't think he's a 4 personally.
Yeah, so I think he will be by the time that he had like NBA muscle by the time he's 25. But now he is absolutely 2-3.
Right.
So they have a real problem with being able to stay big, and so Zeke is the guy that would slide into a lot of those kind of positions. He would have to, even if you're like, well, we're just going to have to play MPJ a lot more. Sure. But you're just going to run. Like, I will say this, if they go down that road, they're going to run into trouble. I think playing, if they go into these stagger rotations, like let's say the non-Jamal Joker minutes where it's like Jamal, Reggie, Peyton at the 3, MPJ at the 4, Joker at the 5, right? Those lineups are going to work. But I do think eventually especially if you look around the league, especially in the Western Conference, these teams, they know they had to get double big. Like, it's not like everybody looks at the Nuggets and we're like, whatever. Look around you. Like, everybody is like, we're going to have as much size as possible because the Nuggets are huge. Mm-hmm. Like, they know that problem. Like, the Nuggets made the Lakers look small when the Lakers make most other teams look small. So there's a lot of teams. Minnesota is the obvious one, but they're not the only one. I just think that we're going to wind up in a situation where I could see Zeke coming in and having it be like, man, huge putback and one by Zeke Naji. Holy crap, Zeke made a 3. Wow, what a defensive shutdown possession by Zeke Naji. All you need is like 2 good games of like 5 possessions.
Right.
And that's all that can decide a series when we go back and we say like, oh, that guy was absolutely huge. So that to me is like absolutely great. I love this Hurricanes. Like, I miss Jeff Green and he's mad at me for being right about Jeff Green, which right here, this guy. Jeff was also bad in a lot of the playoff games. He was just good in some of them.
You made a 3 in the finals that you loved.
I did. I stood up and glared out at Ryan Blackburn after that shot. So last one for you on the what ifs. Okay. What if the Nuggets win the title and someone other than Nikola Jokic wins Finals MVP? Now, Jamal, I get it.
Yeah.
Let's say that Jamal is 70% chance to win that. Who makes up the other 30% chance in that scenario? Who
And it's
else?
not Joker, like the other 7.
Yeah.
Well, considering that, the Boston Celtics are one of the best regular season teams in the last 20 years, it would probably have to be Aaron Gordon, given Aaron Gordon would have to have a masterclass versus Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and Derek White and maybe Xavier Tillman off the bench. So it would probably have to be Aaron Gordon, meaning that remember, in the playoffs last year, he shot 39% from 3.
Yeah.
Limited attempts, but enough to where, everything got ruined on our defensive game plan. So it will probably be Aaron Gordon just because he's going to have the most important responsibility of anybody, I think, consistently.
Before we get out of here, by the way, Nuggets play the Wizards tonight. I'm not going to do a preview. It's the Wizards.
Marvin Bagley special?
And I get Joker has to get a triple-double in order to have a triple-double against all other 29 teams. That's like the narrative, but personally, I'm like, oh, he'll definitely not do it then. He'll definitely have 35, 15, and 9 is what he will finish with. I am kind of curious on this though. If the Nuggets don't win the West, who do you think wins?
Clippers.
Yeah. They're the most likely. It's really funny. So from the betting stuff has really warped my brain where they were so undervalued and I bet them and I bet them and I bet them and I bet them and I bet them. And now the market is caught up and I'm like, I think the Clippers are a little overvalued now. And now I'm looking at the rest of the teams and being like, what about this team? And what about this other team? And what about this squad? And what about this team?
Do you think it's a guarantee, for instance, Mavericks, Lakers 7-8 didn't guarantee that you're taking Minnesota and Thunder?
One, I don't know if it's going to be those teams.
Pelicans, Lakers, Mavs, or maybe Warriors.
I was on a Lakers podcast yesterday with Anthony Irwin, and I think that the Thunder will quake a little bit when they see LeBron on the floor in their first playoff series if it's them. The Wolves, on the other hand, I could see them losing game 1 and everyone being like, here we go. Karl Anthony Towns is a fraud. Rudy Gobert is a fraud. The Lakers are going to do it again. And then the Wolves settle themselves down and they're like, oh, wait, we're way better than this team. We're way better than this team. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think that would be a really fascinating series. But I do think that maybe we've gone the fact that everyone's just well, it's not going to be the Wolves and the Thunder. I was thinking about this yesterday. I'm like, everyone kind of thought that about Denver last year. Now, the Thunder have never been in the playoff environment, so that's different. They're much more akin to the 2019 team.
What if the Wolves won 2 games in the playoffs in the Anthony Edwards era? 2? I think it's 2.
I think so.
Or 3. Did they win 2 and they choked the series versus the Grizzlies?
Yeah.
And Cat had 8 points in one of those games. Yeah.
Well, they won 3 and then the one last year, so it's 4.
Yeah.
They've won 4.
Okay.
But this team is the best one that they've had. So
ever. Maybe ever. I mean, just regular season. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Thursday. We'll be back tomorrow. Guess who returns tomorrow? Adam Mares, back from vacation tomorrow. We'll do World's Finest tomorrow. On Saturday, Swipe is going to have a show for you as well. We'll get you that show for our 5 for the week. Appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure to tune in on Sunday night for World's Finest. Until then, thanks for joining us. Follow Swipa on YouTube and on Twitter at SwipaCam. Check out his YouTube page. Go give the man a subscribe. Do that for us. And we'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.